Hello and welcome to a new episode of Nile TV Newsroom Live. I'm Raham Morsi, and if you're watching the show for the very first time, let me reintroduce you to what the show is all about. The show is composed of a number of different segments. First, we take a closer look at the world of politics. Next comes business and finance, and then we learn more about what's happening in the world of technology. This is in addition to the latest cultural and arts events, as well as the latest in the sports world. First, we're going to take a break and move on to the world of politics. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Tuesday General Tutku Gutlag, the security advisor to South Sudan's president. The meeting was attended by the General Intelligence Chief, Lieutenant General Abbas Kamel. During the meeting, the South Sudanese security advisor handed President al-Sisi a message from President Salva Kiir. The message reviewed means of boosting bilateral ties and the latest developments in Sudan. The meeting also discussed efforts to settle the crisis and the security of the Sudanese people, as well as humanitarian and political challenges facing the country. Both sides stressed the importance of urging Sudanese sides to keep the truce and moving to a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire. They said the permanent ceasefire would allow humanitarian aid into the country and open the path for a constructive dialogue to settle the crisis and continue with a transitional path and the political process to keep the unity of Sudan. Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri headed to Juba to convey a message from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to South Sudan's President Salva Kiir on the situation in Sudan. This came after wrapping up his visit to Chad's capital. And during this visit to Chad, the top diplomat delivered a message from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the Chadian President Mohamed Idriss Deby. During a meeting with the Chadian president, Shukri reviewed Egypt's efforts since the start of Sudan's crisis, with the two struggling sides to reach a ceasefire. He also pointed that Egypt has received more than 60,000 of the Sudanese fleeing from military confrontations. The two sides agreed on the necessity of continued joint coordination to solve the crisis and keep the unity and safety of Sudan. United Nations said on Tuesday heavy fighting in Sudan has led to 700,000 people being internally displaced since the middle of April, adding the figure had doubled in a week. Sudan was thrown into chaos when fighting broke out on April 15th between the forces of Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his deputy turned rival Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, who heads the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. At least 750 people have died. The story.
In the framework of Cairo's intensive efforts to return Egyptians and foreigners stranded in Sudan, an Egyptian military ship arrived at Safaga port carrying Egyptians and foreigners from Port Sudan. Egyptian authorities continue the evacuation of Egyptians and other nationalities from the country. Meanwhile, the UN said on Tuesday heavy fighting in Sudan has led to 700,000 people being internally displaced since the middle of April, adding the figure had doubled in a week. Sudan was thrown into chaos when fighting broke out on April 15 between the forces of Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his deputy turned rival Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, who heads the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF. At least 750 people have died. Even before the beginning of the fighting, 3.7 million people were registered as internally displaced in the country. Another 150,000 people have fled the country since the beginning of the conflict, according to numbers released by the UN Refugee Agency on Monday. The Sudanese are pinning their hopes on talks in Saudi Arabia between envoys of warring factions to end bloodshed that has killed hundreds and triggered a mass exodus. But there is no sign lasting relief will come anytime soon, as analysts say. There has been no word on the progress of the talks, which began on Saturday between the army and the rival paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in the Saudi Red Sea city of Jeddah.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli witnessed the signing of a strategic framework between Egypt and the United Nations on Tuesday. The partnership framework is signed from the Egyptian side by the Minister of International Cooperation, Rania Al-Washat, and the resident representative of the United Nations in Egypt, Elena Panova. Addressing the ceremony, the Prime Minister said Egypt achieved great developments in facing global challenges. The Prime Minister noted that the government prioritizes quick procedures to boost the economic development. For her part, the Minister Al-Washat said the signing ushers a new strategic stage of mutual cooperation between Egypt and the UN, one of the biggest international organizations. The minister confirmed that her ministry is keen to tackle its national role regarding the enhancement of benefiting chances from the international strategy between Egypt and the UN. The framework organizes the development projects which the UN agencies operating in Egypt implement in accordance with the priorities of Egypt's government and its National Plan for Sustainable Development 2030. These projects are in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals 2030. Both sides co-chair the Joint Steering Committee of the Strategic Framework of Partnership between Egypt and the United Nations for Sustainable Development. Egypt condemned the Israeli escalation in the occupied Palestinian territories. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry stressed its total refusal of such attacks that are contrary with the international law and legislations and worsens the situation to a level that could be out of control in the occupied Palestinian territories and limits the efforts of calm and decreasing tensions. Israel killed 3 Palestinian fighters and 10 civilians in a surprise airstrike in Gaza on Tuesday, drawing threats of reprisal from Palestinian factions, signaling it anticipated an imminent flare-up. Israel closed roads in occupied towns near Gaza, instructed Israelis to keep close to bomb shelters, and said it was calling up some military reservists. Images on social media showed Iron Dome rocket interceptor batteries being trucked to the front. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry strongly condemned Israel's attack and said a negotiated political solution was the only way to achieve security and stability. A foreign minister of Turkey and Syria will hold their first official meeting on Wednesday since the start of the Syrian civil war more than a decade ago. Turkey's foreign minister said in a statement that the talks in Moscow will also involve the top diplomats of Russia and Iran. The announcement delivers a diplomatic boost to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan just days before he faces the general election of his 21-year rule on Sunday. A reconciliation with Syria is also supported by Erdogan's opponents and plays an important part in Turkey's election campaign. Erdogan has pledged to speed up the repatriation of nearly 4 million Syrian refugees and migrants who fled to Turkey to escape poverty and war. The Arab League on Sunday welcomed back Syria's government, ending a more than decade-long suspension. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said that this comes upon a unanimous decision by the Arab League's foreign ministers. Shoukry was reading the final declaration in a joint press conference alongside Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Ghait following a foreign ministers' meeting. A ministerial committee will also be formed to continue direct dialogue with the Syrian government in order to reach a comprehensive solution. Over Sudan, the Arab ministers agreed to form a contact group from Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the Arab League Secretary General to try to reach a ceasefire and to open safe humanitarian corridors for civilians. Joining us over the phone to tell us more about the return of Syria is Dr. Sharif Amiri, Professor of International Relations. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, what do you think of this move by the Arab League to bring back Syria to the fold?
Well, it's an urgent move that should be taken now, right now, when the world is changing. We have seen now that Syria has gained more control on the situation now. I think that the Arab Spring showed that many things that took place were planned to destroy the Arab countries. And unfortunately, it succeeded in countries like Libya, like Iraq, like Tunisia. Well, we all know what took place. Now we have to repair the damage. We have to work together as Arab countries. I think that now Syria has the territory occupied by Turkey in Idlib. We have to work that this territory has to be liberated. Egypt always stressed on the unity and the sovereignty of the Syrian state and the respect of the legitimate government. And it's an internal affair inside Syria for the people to decide. So I think that the Arab countries now understood that it's time to join forces. It's time now to work together as Arab countries, whether there are different positions on many issues like Iran. Well, we all know that these were present many years ago, since the 1970s, and still Syria was in the Arab League. So this is a good move. I think that the Syrian government knows that there were some mistakes that were made before towards the Arab world concerning the alliance, the straight alliance with Iran. I think that they are giving assurances that it would not threaten the security of the Gulf states. So it's very positive.
Yes, and sir, we're seeing also that the foreign ministers of Syria and Turkey are also meant to meet tomorrow to discuss Turkish-Syrian relations and trying to normalize that as well. What does this actually mean for the region and for Syria?
It means that there is concrete steps. It's not only meeting of the delegations to decide. No, there are concrete steps. There are usually in these kind of meetings, there are files opened, frank and open discussion is being held. Every country expresses its worries. And we all know also that there is a huge problem of refugees, of Syrian refugees, that has to be solved. So as Egypt urged Syria to give the assurances to all who left Syria that they could come in peace. This issue of refugees is very dangerous for Lebanon, for example. And even in Egypt, we have this burden now of all these refugees. So I think this is one of the important files. The second file would be the file of Iran, whether now Syria is willing to...
But Iran is meant to be part of the meetings as well, taking place in Moscow tomorrow.
Yes, of course, and let me highlight the fact that it's in Moscow. Now Russia has played a huge role in preserving the unity of the state of Syria, and this role has meant a lot for the Arab world, because if Syria would have been divided or had more difficulties, we would witness something, a failed state like in Libya. And this would be very dangerous in the region. So the terrorist groups were very, like in Raqqa, Daesh was present there. The Russians fought them. So I think that now Iran is the main issue now. I think that the Syrians understand the sensitivity of this file. I think that Russia has an important role in that, because they have straight relations with the Iranians, and there will be a balance, because Russia do not wish to be away from the scene in the Middle East, especially in the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. So as China made the peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran, I think also Russia will work between Syria and the Arab world concerning this file.
Okay, Dr. Sharif Amiri, Professor of International Relations, thank you for joining us over the phone. We're going to take a short break and move on with the rest of the episode. Russia's cruise missiles exploded in the air over Kiev on Tuesday, and its soldiers and tanks rolled through Red Square in a military parade as Moscow marked the anniversary of victory over the Nazi Germany with a new attack on Ukraine. The story.
Russia's cruise missiles exploded in the air over Kiev on Tuesday, and its soldiers and tanks rolled through the Red Square in a military parade as Moscow marked the anniversary of victory over the Germans with a new attack on Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin said Russians were united in a scared fight with the West over Ukraine that would end in victory, and accused the United States and its allies of forgetting the Soviet triumph over the Nazis in World War II. Some Russian officials accused Russian military unit of fleeing positions near Bakhmut in Ukraine and said the state was incapable of defending its country. They are having an influence that has risen hugely in Moscow's Ukraine offensive and has in recent days released a series of scathing videos attacking Russia's military leadership. Ukraine said its air defenses shot down 23 to 25 missiles fired chiefly at Kiev, and there were no reported casualties. It was the second night in a row of major Russian airstrikes and fifth so far this month. Earlier, Ukrainian forces shelled the Belgorod region on Russia's border with Ukraine on Monday, injuring at least 5 people and damaging houses and power lines, and that meanwhile, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen arrived in Kiev for talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after a new wave of Russian airstrikes on the capital. The trip falls on the European Union's Europe Day, which Ukraine adopted as its own on Monday.
Now moving on to the world of business and finance, starting with money markets, the dollar crept higher on Tuesday after U.S. credit conditions were less gloomy than expected. While the pound flirted with a one-year peak on expectations, the Bank of England will raise interest rates this week. The offshore yuan slipped 0.1%, while the onshore yuan similarly fell about 0.1% to the dollar. Last month, China's official PMI showed manufacturing activity unexpectedly shrank in April, in another sign of the country's struggling economic recovery following COVID. The Australian dollar rose a slight 0.03%, creeping towards Monday roughly 3-week top. The Kiwi slipped 0.08% to $0.6340, but was not far from the one-month high hit the day earlier. The euro fell 0.12% to $1.0991. Against the basket of currencies, the US dollar index steadied at around 101.44, paring some of its earlier gains over the course of the trading session on Tuesday. And moving on, the German economy is expected to recover more slowly next year than previously forecast as the need for spending on greener infrastructure mounts. Gross domestic product in Europe's largest economy will increase by 0.3% in 2023 and 1.3% the following year, according to projections released in the OECD's latest economic survey of the country. In March, the OECD had predicted GDP growth in 2024 of 1.7%. The forecast for this year was unchanged. In a separate assessment of Germany's progress on climate goals, the OECD recommended that Berlin work to expand its power network and renewable energies infrastructure. It also called on Germany to modernize its transport network and said speed limits posed an untapped opportunity to bring down carbon emissions. The Canadian economy gained 41,000 jobs in April, while the unemployment rate remained stable at 5%, close to a historic low for the 5th consecutive month, Statistics Canada announced Friday. Job growth, which was higher than analysts had forecast, increased in April as in March, and for the 8th consecutive month. Gains were observed mainly in part-time work, the first notable increase since October. Employment increased in the private sector, while the number of self-employed workers remained unchanged. It increased in several sectors such as wholesale and retail trade, transport, as well as in IT, culture and leisure. The average hourly wage increased by 5.2% compared to last year, reaching 33.38 Canadian dollars in April. The proportion of the long-term unemployed, those who had been unemployed for 27 weeks or more, was down. China's imports contracted sharply in April, while exports rose at a slower pace, reinforcing signs of feeble domestic demand despite the lifting of COVID curbs. China's economy grew faster than expected in the first quarter thanks to robust service consumption, but factory output has lagged, and the latest trade numbers point to a long road to regaining the pre-pandemic momentum at home. Inbound shipments to the world's second largest economy fell 7.9% year-on-year in April, extending a 1.4% decline seen a month earlier, while exports grew 8.5%, easing from a 14.8% surge in March, according to data on Tuesday. The data appeared to push Hong Kong and mainland Chinese stocks lower, although global factors were also at play. Hong Kong's Hang Seng was down 1.11% in the early afternoon, while China's blue chip CSI 300 was 0.26% weaker after climbing 0.5% before the lunch break. And in the tech world, artificial intelligence could pose a more urgent threat to humanity than climate change. AI pioneer Geoffrey Hinton said in an interview. Geoffrey Hinton, widely known as one of the godfathers of AI, recently announced he had quit his top tech job after a decade at the firm, saying he wanted to speak out on the risks of technology without it affecting his former employer. Hinton's work is considered essential to the development of the contemporary AI systems. In 1986, he co-authored the seminal paper Learning Representations by Back-Propagating Errors, a milestone in the development of the neural networks undergirding AI technology. In 2018, he was awarded the Turing Award in recognition of his research breakthroughs. But he is now among a growing number of tech leaders publicly espousing concerns about the possible threat posed by AI if machines were to achieve greater intelligence than humans and take control of the planet. He's quoted as saying he would like to devalue climate change and believes that AI could be a more urgent threat, adding that with climate change, it's easy to recommend what it is to do, but with AI, it's not as clear what should be done. OpenAI, a startup by ChatGPT, launched in November, becoming the fastest growing app in history, reaching 100 million monthly users. In April, the tech boss Elon Musk joined thousands in signing an open letter calling for a 6-month pause in the development of systems more powerful than OpenAI's recently launched ChatGPT as it's fast learning. While Hinton shares signatories' concerns that AI may prove to be an existential threat to mankind, he disagreed with pausing research. In the European Union, a committee of lawmakers responded to the Musk-backed letter calling on U.S. President Joe Biden to convene a global summit on the future direction of the technology and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Last week, the committee agreed a landmark set of proposals targeting generative AI, which could force companies to disclose any copyright materials used to train their models. And joining us over the phone to tell us more about this is Mr. Walid Haggag, an information security expert. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you and all your audience.
Sir, what do you think of the notion of AI being a serious threat in the near future?
The artificial intelligence, or AI, has been a topic of discussion in the recent years, since a long time ago, with many debating on the potential benefits and risks associated with this technology. However, one of the pioneers, which is Stuart Russell, has gone so far as suggested that the threat of AI may be more urgent than climate change.
Yes.
Russell, by the way, is a computer science professor at University of California, has been a vocal critic of the current approach of developing AI.
Yes.
And he argued that current AI systems are built to maximize a specific objective, such as winning a game or completing a task without considering the border's impact on society. And according to his speech, his narrow focus on specific objectives is what makes AI so dangerous. And he warned that if we continue down with this path,
Yes.
we risk creating machines that are capable of causing catastrophic harm, either intentionally or unintentionally.
Yes.
By
Sir,
the way, yeah.
I apologize for cutting you off there, but there was also an interview for one of the biggest tech bosses out there, Elon Musk, who's also investing in AI, despite saying this. He spoke about the need to sort of create rules and regulations for the use of AI, and he spoke about the fact that usually what happens is first we put regulations after the event happens, after a problem occurs. But he said that if this is the case with AI, it could be too late to put regulations, as AI would be in control of everything on the planet. Is this true?
Yeah, that's right. We should also have ethics for this AI, because if there is no ethics and no rules and regulations, it will be a big disaster.
Yeah.
And also there is a model that IBM always worked to highlight this, which is called human-centered AI, or HCAI. These AI researchers explore different domains such as sales, finance, human resources, everything. So human-centered AI is an emerging discipline intent on creating AI systems that amplify and augment rather than displace human abilities.
Yes.
And seek to preserve human control
Yes.
in a way that ensures artificial intelligence meets our needs, while also operating transparently, delivering outcomes and respecting privacy, which is the most important point, is respecting the privacy, that most of AI ignore it. And also the cooperation, collaboration and co-creation between AI and the human being is a very essential point. Adhering to the core value that human and AI is better than either one individual.
Yes. Sir, there's actually experiments out there right now where they're trying to integrate, I suppose, human cells with computers and using AI and so forth. What do you think of this idea of having some sort of bio machine?
There will be happen for sure very soon, but don't forget that the human being information is the fuel for the artificial intelligence. So it can't be only artificial intelligence without human being. How can they get the information? This is at the end is a computer. So you should give him input to get output.
Yes.
But the artificial intelligence reaches a very horrible level. Right now you can create people that are not exist in the real world without just a few texts on some of the free websites that existing right now. You can ask for some kind of type of photo with a special type of cam, with a special type of light, and also you can say to the AI platform, if you need it realistic, 2D, 3D, hyper-realistic, it can create unique photos that you cannot even imagine this is created by AI.
Yes.
So we reached a very catastrophic level of the AI. If you don't have the laws and the rules and the ethics, it will be a big disaster.
Yes, there's also many stories of sort of voice recognition scams where people have used AI, I suppose, to steal people's voices and create a fictional scenario and trying to scam people by asking them for money, as if it's family.
Yeah. This happened a lot of times at the States, that young people kidnapped, and the people who kidnapped them took a part of their voice, and using AI, he created a new fake scam that he's pretending to be feared or something like this, and send his voice to his parents to ask them for the money.
Yes.
And most of them tried to pay the money, but by luck, they discovered that this is all a scam.
Yes.
Because their son called them asking for something from the place where he was living.
So, sir, what do you think is going to happen in the near future when it comes to AI? Because there's statistics about how AI could affect, other than the existential threat, it could actually affect jobs, and that about 40% of jobs may no longer exist with the technological advances when it comes to AI.
The AI reached a very high level, even for creating deepfake videos, that you cannot even differentiate between the real and fake. So anyone can say anything in any place that he's never existed before or never said these words before.
Yes.
Which means that if we cannot control this technology and use it in a useful way, it will do a very bad effect and impact to the society.
Okay, Mr. Hageg, an information security expert, thank you so much for joining us over the phone. We're going to take a short break and move on with the rest of the episode. NASA launched 2 small satellites designed to track tropical cyclones hour by hour from a base in New Zealand on Monday in a project that could improve weather predictions on devastating storms. NASA launched 2 small satellites designed to track these cyclones and launched it on Monday. The new storm trackers sent into orbit on a rocket built by U.S. company Rocket Lab can fly over hurricanes or typhoons in the Pacific every hour compared to every 6 hours with current satellites. Researchers will be able to see storms evolve in an hourly basis, according to NASA scientists, at a press conference on the first launch of the Tropics mission. A second Rocket Lab-built vessel is due to launch in about 2 weeks, carrying 2 more satellites to complete a small constellation for 4 storm tracking satellites. The information gathered on rainfall, temperature and humidity could help scientists determine where a hurricane will make landfall and how intense it will be, helping people living in coastal areas to be better prepared for possible evacuations. In the world of art and culture, Britain on Sunday celebrated the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla with street parties around the country and a concert at Windsor Castle. Thousands of local street parties were planned on Sunday on the second day of events to mark the coronation of King Charles III, ending with a concert in front of 20,000 people in Windsor Castle. After days of back-to-back diplomatic receptions, garden parties and rehearsals for Saturday's events at Westminster Abbey, Charles, who's 74, and Queen Consort Camilla, 75, hosted a private reception. They rejoined the evening concerts at the Castle west of London. The coronation as monarch of the United Kingdom and 14 Commonwealth countries around the world was the first in Britain for over 70 years. The glittering ceremony, steeped in 1,000 years of tradition and ritual, attended by global royalty and world leaders. But Sunday's events are a shift in emphasis. While the coronation ceremony has its roots in England from 1066, the big launch parties look to bring modern Britain's communities closer. Monday had been declared a public holiday, meaning people can let loose on Sunday without having to worry about what's going to happen. Charles and Camilla hope the long weekend will provide an opportunity to spend time and celebrate with friends, family and community. Joining us over the phone is Dr. Noha Bakray, Professor of Political Science. Good evening to you, ma'am. Can you hear me? Dr. Noha, are you there? Dr. Noha? And we're trying to reach the professor right now. There's a bit of a technical problem, but we should be shortly with her in a few seconds to discuss more about the coronation ceremony and what's happening there. Dr. Noha Bakray, are you there with us? Yes, we're trying to reach her. We're still trying to reach her, but we're going to be discussing the coronation ceremony itself and how it's intended to merge the modern and old traditions. Dr. Noha Bakray, Professor of Political Science, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Can you tell us your take on what happened during Coronation Day? It seemed to be a mix of joy in addition to some sporadic protests across the nation in the UK.
Exactly. You've described it very clearly. Actually, we find that all the older generation, they are very much for the monarchy. They were all very excited, while the younger generation were less excited about it. I think it's more of a historical thing, which maybe the younger generation do not appreciate very much. England is passing by difficult times at the moment. It's out of Brexit. It's suffering economically, as you know that London is going through inflation. England as a whole. Also, the king is not only the king of London, but he also is the head of state of 14 other countries around the world,
Yes.
known as the realms. They include Australia, Canada, Jamaica, New Zealand, and the king of the Commonwealth. And among these countries also, the Commonwealth, 54 states, which were mainly former British colonies, you'll find a mixture of feelings. So we can say that the mixture of feelings were inside the United Kingdom among the different generations, and also among the Commonwealth, as well as other countries that England or the king is the head of state.
Yes, even during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, she had, in their points of view, lost territories in the part of the Commonwealth, which was distressing to the people living in the UK or the monarchy itself. Do you believe this will also happen when it comes to King Charles? We're going to start to see breaking away from the monarchy.
Well, this is not because of King Charles III. It's because of the developments in general, where people are looking for a new kind of rule, especially that at the moment England is no longer the empire, it's no longer nourishing economically or spreading all over the world, winning wars. So it's a different world with different global context.
Yes, and King Charles, he always talks about having some sort of modern monarchy and modern Britain. Do you believe he'll be able to achieve this when it comes to modernizing how the monarchy works?
Well, let's remember that the king reigns but does not rule in England. So we're talking about a country that is ruled by the government, and the government is the head of state, the prime minister. Yes. Here we're talking about the king, who has a main function as he appoints, the prime minister and all other ministers. He opens new sessions of the parliament. He welcomes presidents and he welcomes rulers from all over the world. But his power to make change is very limited. So let's put things in its context. We shouldn't expect major change unless it is requested from the people.
Yes, there's also the idea or the notion that the monarchy, part of the reason some want to keep the monarchy, or they speak about it in the UK, is the fact that it is a tourist attraction as well. It brings in a lot of money. The monarchy itself generates a lot of money for the UK. Do you believe that this is going to continue to bring in or generate profits for the United Kingdom?
Of course, it will continue. Maybe we can see less of it during the coronation of King Charles because of the economic situation globally and of the inflation. But let's remember how many people went to attend or to watch, how many places were rented nearby in order for tourists to be there. Of course, it's different than the royal weddings we've seen because of the global conditions all over the world. Less tourists are traveling, but it will continue to be an attraction. It will continue to be a symbol of royalty. People will look up to the royal family. Will continue to look up to the royal family, especially the conservative British people.
Okay. Do you believe that the coronation itself is some sort of distraction for what's happening when it comes to the UK economy?
It's a short-term distraction because people will eventually go back home and need to buy their groceries and remember how prices have inflated.
Okay, Dr. Nile Bakrai, Professor of Political Science, thank you so much for joining us over the phone. We're going to take a short break and move on. Moving to the world of sports, Argentina's World Cup winning captain Lionel Messi was named the Laureus Sportsman of the Year, while sprint champion Shelly Ann Fraser-Price bagged the top women's honor at the awards ceremony on Monday. The story.
Lionel Messi was named the Laureate Sportsman of the Year. Messi also received an award on behalf of the Argentina men's football team, who were named World Team of the Year after their triumph at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The 35-year-old Paris Saint-Germain forward has previously won the award once before, sharing it with Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton in 2020. Messi also became the first athlete to scoop both the World Sportsman of the Year award and the World Team of the Year award in the same year. Jamaican Fraser Price enjoyed an outstanding 2022, which included winning the 100-meter gold at the World Athletics Championships. Tennis player Carlos Alcaraz, who won the 2022 U.S. Open and rose to number 1 in the ATP rankings, was named the Laureus World Breakthrough of the Year. Christian Eriksen, who recovered from the cardiac arrest he suffered at the European Championship in 2021 to return to Premier League football with Brentford and then Manchester United before competing at the World Cup with Denmark, received the Laureus World Comeback of the Year award. The Laureus World Sports Awards nominees are selected by the global media, while the winners are determined by the 71 members of the Laureus World Sports Academy. The awards have been presented annually since their inception in 2000.
Finally, Cristiano Ronaldo's hopes of clinching the Saudi Pro League at the first attempt suffered another setback when his Al Nassr club were held to a 1-1 home draw by the lowly Al Khalij in Riyadh on Monday. The visitors, who are battling to stave off relegation, took a shock lead through Fabio Martins after 4 minutes at Al Awal Park, but Alvaro Gonzalez soon equalized for Al Nassr. Portuguese striker Ronaldo thought he had given his team the lead in the 58th minute, only for the referee to cancel the goal for offside. League leaders Ittihad, meanwhile, thrashed Abha 4-0 to open up a 5-point cushion over second-place Al Nassr with 4 games to play. And this brings us to the end of this edition of Nile TV Newsroom Live, but stay tuned for more here on Nile TV.